Growing concerns around coronavirus have led to the cancellation of concerts and conferences, large public events around the world, smaller social audiences. True story. This is a very interesting time for us. Is that the right call? And ladies, what are you doing? How has this touched your lives?
Well, I'll say...
You're here, that's why you're like, just keep going.
Yeah, just keep doing it. A little while, well, I had planned a cruise with my kids for March break some time ago, and I had said a couple of days ago on the show, hey, we're still going. So at that time, Chief Medical Health Officer Theresa Tam had said, think twice if you're going to go on a cruise. And I thought, I can live with think twice. I'm good with think twice. And then she said, I recommend that Canadians do not travel on cruise ships. And I went, oh. So a couple of hours ago, I called up and I canceled our cruise. We are, my kids are really sad, but you know what? Doing the best for them that I can. And we're still going to go, so we're going to fly, and we're going to do some fun stuff, but we won't be cruising, you know? So
just for now, right?
Just for now, we'll reschedule, and that's great because, you know, airlines are doing that and cruise lines are doing that because these are the times that we're in.
Can I note the audience is like, oh, that's so sad that you canceled, and yet when you said it on the show a few days ago or last week that you were cruising, the audience went, oh. Yeah. Like, what are you doing?
And the social media, it's like, Marcy, don't go. Don't go, Marcy.
Yeah.
Don't go.
Well, Jessica on Facebook said I was at a concert last night. Speaking of concerts that have been canceled, the coronavirus was literally the last thing on my mind. People aren't running around sneezing and hacking on others for goodness sake. Can we just stop the hysteria? I mean, I hear you, Jessica, to some extent, but I mean, it's hard not to feel a little, I think, alarmed, you know, because people are talking about it, because everywhere you turn, it feels like there are things that are being canceled. I'm interested in the kind of what seems a little bit arbitrary in this things that are canceled, and then lots of things aren't canceled, right? Like right now, I have a bunch of speaking engagements. I was at one on the weekend, and it was not canceled, and I'm very grateful for that. But I'm wondering what's going to happen in the days to come. I'm also very interested to see what happens with like the Olympics, like one of the biggest sort of things that are happening in Japan.
Movies aren't canceled.
Movies aren't being canceled.
No.
Like
Not yet.
Not yet.
No.
But I mean, well, the one thing I did give my mom a little bit of grief over on the weekend was she's right now in Florida, and I said, so how's everything going, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, well, we were at church today. And I was like, okay, but wait. I was like, you're at church, okay. So she's like, don't worry, the priest has told us that, you know, during that time when you kind of meet and greet each other, there's a part in the Mass when you do that. She's like, they've told us like not to shake hands. I'm like, okay, fine. But I think actually it's okay, Mom. God will understand if you don't go to church for a little while. And I'm only saying that insofar as like, this is the target demographic.
Yeah.
In many ways for this virus. So I think the elderly,
yeah.
she's in her 70s. So I think, while she doesn't have any underlying health conditions, it's still a bigger concern for me. So I'm forcing my uncle, who's going to visit them, to actually put into place like a mandate. Because she won't listen to me, but she might listen to him.
I don't know. I'm still going to NBA games. I'm still doing that, and I'm still taking the subway as well. I mean, there's so many things. So I guess I'm living on both sides of the fence with this issue.
I just read a statement from Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment that said the risk to our community remains low.
Yeah.
So the games are still ongoing.
The games are still ongoing. They're not allowing reporters, I guess, in locker rooms.
They're doing hand sanitizer everywhere. Like, they put that in the statement. We have hand sanitizer in abundance.
Yeah.
But yeah, the games are still happening.
Yeah.
I think, I mean, personally, it's no secret on this show that I love emergency preparedness. I have been living for this for a long time.
Are you
in many
the reason
ways.
why there are so many grocery shelves?
No, that's
like,
not.
You're the
Not
reason
me.
why.
My emergency stocks have been like packed. My bags have been packed for
That's
like
why we're all coming
10
to your
years.
house.
Guys,
We're all
I'm
going to
good.
your house.
But I will say, I mean, I don't want to make light of it, but emergency preparedness is a real thing for me. And I am not trying to fearmonger. I'm just looking at very reputable people who are talking. And I'm looking at numbers. Dr. Yoni was on our show the other day talking about coronavirus. And the one thing that I took for the entire segment was, you know, I'm low risk. There's a lot of us that are not in the, you know, high risk categories. My parents are. My dad's 77, my mom is 79. And while they're healthy, it doesn't matter. 60 or over, you got to be a little more careful and sort of more aware and start to think about your environment a little differently. However, he had said, you know, it was the World Health Organization who said, you know, there could be 70% of the planet that gets infected. Now, it's a very, like 80% of those cases are mild. You might get the sniffles and it's over. But there is a small percentage where if you do get it, it could be fatal. Now, I started to think about those people. Then I also said, like what he told me that I just cannot get out of my brain, which is we have to first and foremost protect our healthcare system. If you are watching us in different parts of this country, you can't even get a family doctor, let alone try to find a test if you think you're sick. There are places where hospitals are running already at 120% capacity because it's also flu season. And then I started to go, this is where I went deep, guys. I said, how many like, you know, intensive care unit beds do we have in this country? And the number, because I want to get it correct, this was written in the National Post 3 days ago. It was a U of T study. In this country, in 286 hospitals, we have 3,170 ICU beds, and we have approximately 5,000 ventilators. Why ventilators? Because the coronavirus, when it hits those who get it really bad, it is a respiratory issue. They need ventilators to stay alive. I'm like, 5,000 ventilators sounds like a lot, except that it's flu season, and a lot of those are actually already being used by people who are still suffering with the flu. So then I said, Dr. Yoni said, protect the healthcare system. So what do I take away from that? For the next 2 to 4 weeks, I am laying low at home. That's all that I can do. I just want to lay low and be as safe as I can.
I think laying low is definitely like, I think that's the easiest thing to do is just not go out, not go clubbing, not go to the show or whatever.
I won't be going clubbing, no. Regardless of coronavirus, yes.
I just had to get on an airplane this weekend, like you. I went to cover a junket for eTalk. We were in LA. And at the time, like LA had just declared, California had just declared emergency. But still got on the plane, went to a screening. There were about 250 people there. I wasn't worried about that. The concession I made, listen to me, the princess, is that typically at these events there's a buffet, and I avoided the buffet.
That's how you stayed safe.
It's a huge sacrifice for me because I don't know if you guys know, but I'm an eater. And when there's free food, I cannot resist it. But I decided to say, anyway, all jokes aside, there have been stories in different countries, including the United States, about school closures. Yep. And then there are festival closures. Coachella is considering not happening in April. And all of these sort of pop culture structures are being affected, concert tours, et cetera. And I guess my concern is, for sure, I think people should be safe, but these things don't happen in a vacuum. There's like a ripple effect. And the ripple effect for a lot of people is that if there are things that are closing and events not happening, people don't get to go to work, and they don't get to make a living, and they don't get to pay the bills. And then the ripple effect of that is they can't feed their families. There was a story, and I know that's not in Canada, but if it happens in Canada, there's a story in the United States where if schools are closing, that's where a lot of underserved kids from certain communities go to get their lunches and breakfasts. Yeah. So those kids aren't going to be fed if the schools are closing. So I just worry about that. I worry about
That's where the government has to step in. I know that our government has already made changes to employment insurance, and so that the wait is shorter. There are things that our government is doing. There are a lot of people who are encouraging business owners that if you can afford, if someone has to stay home to self-quarantine, that they're encouraging them, and hopefully they can find it in their budget to make sure that that is a paid self-quarantine period and not having to, like, I don't know, take vacation time to self-quarantine for 2 weeks. Like, that is where all of the government institutions that you kind of maybe take for granted have to step up. Because yes, of course, I think about the parents who don't have babysitting options if schools close, for example. But the flip side is let's look to their employers, because this is unprecedented times. Like, you know, we've lived through SARS and all of these things, but this feels different in some way. And I'm not going to fearmonger, but we're all trying to get information. And it's like all institutions have to step up, and we have to take care of each other.
I will say, like, I agree with you. And I think that unfortunately there are institutions that take forever to get things done, especially like a government red tape system, like for it to go through. It takes forever. And meanwhile, there are families that are really, really hurting. Personally, I have several relatives who work for airlines. They're not working. They've had to move home. So anyway, I just want us to be conscious too about the ripple effect of this kind of thing. When you're canceling everything, in the short term, there is still a different kind of suffering.
Mm-hmm. I definitely don't deny that. But If the alternative is someone in your family dying, we have to figure it out. It's complicated, but we've got to figure it out. We got a lot going on here, guys. We do want to tell you, though, that you can monitor the latest developments at ctv.ca/coronavirus. The very latest information is there, or you can tune into CTV News Channel as well. We're going to take a very quick break. We'll be right back after this. You ready to mix it up?
Yes, please.
All the hottest topics.
For the record, I actually don't think this is a man thing.
I completely disagree.
From opinionated voices.
Montel Williams is Michael Bublé. Gigi Gorgeous.
So happy to be here.
All hour long.
The three things you've mentioned, I love.
Nothing is off limits once we get talking.
When I feel uncomfortable, the turtle goes back inside.
How's that for a tease?
Catch the Socials All Talk edition Thursday.